you have to retain, who are good spenders. And you have to get others who are not active, who are not using the debit kind of capability. Those you have to activate. And those are the two segments, so as to say customer segment where you have to actually do it. And when you start looking at it, and the rest of the things you can look at separately, which is activity on the debit card leads to enhance revenues across the entire retail relationship. And you have a fee income and multi-currency, which is across the border currency that you can add to that. So what we did was we took data from 3 countries, 5 different banks, because you see the behavior of the consumer is already getting reflected in the transactions they are making. And each of the transactions is reflected on the savings bank, because each of the transactions is hitting your savings account. So if you are able to analyze the information or the behavior of the consumers, and we took, for a few million customers, we took the data from 3 different countries, Australia, Singapore, and India. And we analyzed that, and we created models out of that. So what is the behavior the consumer is reflecting? So that's the behavior models, and when the customer opens an account and builds experience with the bank, or the first anniversary of the card renewal and tenure impact on retail relationship. And this is what came out of it in terms of communication. When he comes on board, then you have a welcome and awareness program. 3 months, what we determined was that after 3 months is when he gets jaded with the relationship. And that's when you should target him with awareness, activation, and simple loyalty program. And then, first anniversary is when you got to launch the rewards program. That's when he's looking for something, in return for his relationship, for his, continued relationship, and special offers and complimentary invites. And, then the communications could be seasonal based, could be, time on books based, or could be triggers. So he went to, he went and paid for a training program, then, maybe there is an opportunity for us to look at for other training programs and so on and so forth. So, this is an entire model that we shared with banks. We created this model. This is the entire business model. We went and, talked to banks, shared with them, shared with the heads of the asset side, the liabilities business, sorry, not the asset, the liability side. And, asked them to work it out on their consumer size of the base that they had. And, help them with delivering this entire experience, developing the creators and so on and so forth. And that became the entire business value model for them. Thank you.
Thank you. You can't keep the professor away from the dais. What I'm going to do now is just going to ask each of the panelists one question, and after which I want to open this up for questions from you. Okay. So, Professor Arvind talked about the evolution of business models over time, and therefore in that context, I was just going to ask SVK, how he thought about his business model when he started the BPO business, when nobody had even coined the phrase BPO.
Good evening to everybody. It's not that I started it, I was forced to start something. And we did not, as Subra rightly said, we did not have a name for the business. It became BPO in 1999. I started that in 1989. I worked for a couple of years and decided I cannot work on anybody, not realizing that being a vendor is much more difficult. Citi wanted to do something. They wanted to start their credit card business. They decided to do it the vendor way. In fact, we should say in India, Citibank pioneered this outsourcing concept through Ashok. And we were called by different names. We were called extended arm for Citibank. We were called outsourced service providers, anything, but we were not bothered as long we got our bills paid. And when we looked at the business model canvas last year, I was surprised because I did not really understand that, because I didn't have a business model canvas, and I knew that if I wanted to fill up the canvas and start a business, I would never have started a business. I mean, if you look into it tomorrow, you'll understand it. Lot of thinking, lot of planning has to go to develop your business canvas, which is you complete the business canvas, which is a business model. But we were, what we did was something which definitely will not survive the present competitive environment. But the bottom line for all these business canvas, business model, business plan is the basic, the fundas or principles one as an entrepreneur should have. You should have the passion to deliver. If you do not have the passion, you cannot succeed. And I followed, I was lucky because I dealt only with Fortune 5 companies in India. I dealt with Citicorp, I dealt with GE, then I went into Fullerton. During the process, we handled ICICI and we handled Amex to some extent. But the basic thing which one needs is, as an entrepreneur, like I said, you need the passion, you need to have the integrity, and you need to have the attitude. Otherwise, it's going to be a very, very difficult process to be successful. Like Peter Drucker, I start quoting that. I read it recently. Entrepreneurship is not a science. It's not an art. It is just plain practice. That's what Peter Drucker has mentioned, which is reality. I mean, no, you cannot say I am an entrepreneur just because you started a business. You will have to practice it. You will have to go through all the processes. You will have to, and believe me, you have to make a lot of sacrifices. Sacrifices which, unless you're prepared to make sacrifices, you can never be successful. Like, one instance is my daughter, now she's in US. She asked me a few years back, where were you when I was growing up? Because both me and my wife, we used to stay in the office till 10 in the night, delivering to cities' requirements. Okay, that's the kind of sacrifice you have to be mentally prepared for. It's now you can say it's high funda to say, okay, we are practicing, we are entrepreneurs, but the realities are different. And the basic thing now is today, in the present scenario, unless you have people think that business plan or we have a business model, we have everything. That's not it. The business model is one of the factors in creating a business plan. If you do not have your business model, one step of a business plan is gone. So business model is so critical in the entire process of success. So that's what I want to put it across to you people. You can ask questions. Then it's over.
Thanks, SVK. Anil, given your background of VC funding, if you could say a few words about how you evaluate the business models that come your way.
SVK talked about business model being a component of the business plan. We tend to think that it is one of the biggest or most important components of the business plan. The other one is essentially the people, the team that is going to build that business, which is probably bigger importance in many cases for us. The way I think it's so essentially it is people, it is your business model, and then the rest of it is your projections and so on and so forth. So business model, we think of it really as a summary of your overall business, and I articulate it with a simple question. When you start answering that question, it becomes pretty comprehensive. And the question is, in your business, who gives what to whom and how, right? What it means is, if you think about who gives what, gives is not like giving or it's a charity thing, but essentially who provides what to whom. And at a very basic level, your business is essentially you are selling a product or a service to a customer. That is a gift. And the customer is giving you money for it. That is also a gift, right? The rest of it is a whole bunch of mechanics of how that service is delivered, through whom, how that service is or that product is channeled, sold, marketed, so on and so forth. Includes your go-to-market strategy, etc. So there is also funding aspect in this question because one of the gives is money. You are getting money. That money is coming from the customer, but is it really coming only from the customer? In certain business models, the money that the customer gives you is coming from some other entity. It could be financing entity, it could be government in terms of subsidies or so on and so forth. So it is really asking this question to yourself as to who is giving what to whom and how. How is that given? How is that money received? With that question, we kind of look at the business model, and a few things we tend to look for are what is, does the person have a clear understanding, at least at that point in time, as to what those gives and gets are. What are they giving? What is the money? What is the price? What is the money that they think they will be charging? Who are their customers? What are the characteristics of their customers? Why would the customers buy? So on and so forth. So you start with that business model, and this leads you down to many questions. Many questions also around the ecosystem of that business, which is the context of this business. I tend to look at the understanding of the entrepreneur about the ecosystem of their business in fairly detailed way. Now this is, I do investments in early stage. Many companies, or most of the companies, are pre-revenue companies. And as all of us know or have heard, the business models for many companies, I would say, I've heard figures as high as 80 to 90% have changed substantially in their first or second year of operation. So the question is, what is the point in then thinking through all this and getting all these detailed answers to all these questions? But the point really is, it also tells me more about what kind of thinking has gone into it, what is the ability to analyze and think through, observe the ecosystem, and also find out answers, make certain guesses, how intelligent are those guesses, etc., etc. So knowing fully well that there could be surprises and there could be changes in the business model, I still want to know how much thinking has gone into that understanding. The second thing is also about the money flow. There are certain things in the business model, especially from the money flow perspective, that raises some of the questions or raises the risk perception of the business model. For example, how many hands is the money coming from? How many hands is it flowing through? Is it the number of hands it is coming from? So for example, giving my clean tech domain example, if it is relying quite a bit on the government handouts or subsidies, etc., then there's a certain amount of risk in all that. And the experience has shown now that any overly reliant business on those kinds of funding